Welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to teach you how to do a plaid. We're going to do it in glitter. Okay, this is going to be super duper fun, you guys. I'm going to show you how to tape off the tumbler. Now, I am using a 32-ounce plump from the Steel Magnolia, and I highly recommend you use this tumbler for your plaid because it does not have a taper, so your lines are going to be perfectly straight and they're not going to get smaller at the bottom, so I love that. Now, what I do is I take either painter's tape or duct tape, and you are going to want to tape it side by side vertically going around the tumbler. Now, you guys want to know something funny? How I can always remember what horizontal and vertical mean, because I always get them mixed up. Is that I always tell my sister she's vertically challenged, because she's a shorty, but she's cute. Sister, if you're watching this, I love you. So you are going to want to tape this side by side all around the tumbler. Don't leave any spaces in between the tape. This is going to ensure that your lines are perfectly straight. Last year I did plaids on 30-ounce skinnies, and once you get towards the bottom of the tumbler, the squares start to get smaller because of that taper. Having to not deal with that was so amazing this time around. Also, you guys, I'm in the drive-thru at McDonald's, so I'm so sorry if you guys hear car noises. Listen, I will never lie to you, okay? I am doing this voiceover in the drive-thru of McDonald's, and I made my husband drive me because I was drinking. It's the honesty for me. Okay, so once you have the tape, you want to remove every other tape, okay? So every other tape, pull it off, okay? And then we're going to just cut the excess tape off and just make sure that we have the lines on our tumbler. This is going to be the first step. So far, I hope you're following along just fine. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take more of that 1-inch tape, but this time we're going to tape it over the vertical, over the vertical lines that we've already placed, and we are going to do the same thing all the way around the circumference of the tumbler, okay? So we're going to tape one tape right after the other, not leaving any spaces in between, and we're going to go all the way down to the bottom of the tumbler. Now, I know that doing plaids can be really confusing. I know when I first started, I watched an abundance of tutorials and could never figure it out until my really good friend Felicia from By Felicia taught me last November how to tape off a plaid. So I'm trying to make this as easy for you guys as possible. Once you have taped off all the way to the bottom, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to remove every other tape, okay? Every other tape. So step 1, put horizontal tape all the way around the tumbler, remove every other one. Step 2, do the exact same thing, but place the tape vertically going all the way around the cup, and then remove every other one. Now, take your glue. Now, I recommend that you do not use Mod Podge, okay? Use art glue, art glitter glue. I cannot stress what a difference this has, okay? My friend Felicia, who's the one who taught me to make plaids, put me onto this glue, and it is what helped me finally be able to make a good plaid, okay? You can get it on Amazon. I will post a link in the description as usual. So now what you want to do is you want to use that glue, and you can put a little bit of acrylic paint, dispersion color, whatever you want to match your glitter. I didn't have time to prep my tumbler properly and spray paint the color base that I wanted. So I am going to have to do it this way, which is to put a little bit of color in my glue to have it match the glitter. But if you do have a chance to spray paint it, I would recommend that you let it dry for like 10 hours before you go in with the tape, or I promise you, you will peel up the paint with a tape. You have to let it really, really dry. And I didn't have time to do that, so that's why I decided to go this route. Also, it also helps that I'm using metallic colors because that gives even more good coverage over that stainless steel. So the fact that I'm using metallic colors makes it even more okay that I didn't have a base color. What you want to do is, for every single square that you have exposed, you want to go ahead and put your first color. It doesn't matter if you do your darker color or your lighter color. I only would start with the darker color if my lighter color was white, but since in this case it's not, I'm just going to go ahead and start with gold. Now fill every single square with your very first color, and then make sure you have really good coverage. You know, make sure you get every single little corner with glue, just to make sure that those squares are very square and they have those sharp edges. Okay, so straight from the taping, we came right away to fill in those very first squares that are exposed. Once we're done filling every single square, we're going to move on to our next color, which is going to be a mixture of the two colors that you're going to be using. So when you do a plaid, you only need to use 2 colors, because the third color that you're going to use is going to be a mixture of both of the base colors that you're using. So what you want to do, what the goal is here, is to mix them so you create the perfect middle color in between your lowest color, your lighter color, and your darker color. With the mixture that we made, that really pretty color that we made, mixing both of our colors, we are going to use this next, okay? But first, you want to remove every single piece of horizontal tape that is left. And that's going to expose a little square in between both of the gold like 2 gold squares, right? So as you're removing that horizontal tape, you can see that we still have vertical tape that's, you know, hiding a row, but we have 1 square exposed in between the gold squares. Now that's where we're going to put our mixture. So you're going to take you're going to take your glue, okay, with your paint in it, whatever paint, you know, you need, or if you spray paint your tumbler a base color that matches both of your glitters, you really don't need to put anything in your glue. You could just use the glue by itself. So you go ahead and you just put your glue in between those squares. Now, my best advice that I could give you is to use a flat tip brush, because that is what helps you get in there, and it helps you make those really precise lines of glue. Because again, you want your squares to be as square as possible. You want straight lines. You want to make sure you fill in every single corner with glue so that you have those sharp square corners. So using a flat brush is going to make it easier for you. Now, this is something that you just can't speed through. You have to take your time, because if you're done and you're missing some spots, it is going to be really hard for you to go back and glitter over the squares a second time and keep the integrity of those straight lines. So just do your best, take your time. This is a labor of love, but you will get faster. My first plaid took me forever, and as you continue to do them, it gets easier. You start to remember which way to tape. You start to move a little bit faster. You remember which colors go in what squares. So it will get easier as you do it, I promise. You just have to get the first one out of the way. And I really hope that I will be able to help you conquer that fear of getting your first plaid out of the way, because gosh, I know how victorious I felt after that first plaid, that I was like, oh my gosh, I actually did a good job. So I really want you guys to take that away from this tutorial, my loves. I could teach you how to twerk, I could teach you how to be ratchet, but I at least also want to teach you how to make a plaid. So please leave me comments in the description of please leave me comments in this video. I really want to know if you felt like this was easy to follow along, if this made you excited to actually try a plaid for the first time. Okay, so now I'm going to play you a little song while you watch me continue to fill in all those squares. I feel like I've done a pretty good job of explaining. I actually feel like I've over-explained, but hopefully you guys are understanding each step. I love you.
Oh, the bitter winds are coming in, and I'm already missing the summer. Stockholm's cold, but I've been told I was born to endure this kind of weather. When it's you, I find like a ghost in my mind. I am defeated, but I gladly wear the crown. I'll be your Emmy Lou. Johnny too. No, I'm not asking much of you. Just sing, little darling, sing with me. So much I know that things just don't grow if you don't bless them with your patience. And I've been there before. I held at the door for every stranger with a promise. But I'm holding back, that's the strength that I lack. Every morning keeps returning at my window, and it brings me to you. And I won't just pass through, but I'm not asking for a storm. I'll be your Emmylou and I'll be your Juliet. You'll be my Graham, my Johnny too. No, I'm not asking much of you. Just sing, little darling, sing with me.
What you're going to want to do after that is you are going to want to take that mixture color and you're going to want to continue painting squares with your glue. Now, just always remember, in this case, the color that we did first, which was gold, you're always going to put the mixture in between the gold, okay? So you did it in between the gold vertically, and now you're going to do it horizontally. So do you see that square, like that space in between where like that burgundy color is? That's where you're going to put your darkest color, okay? But your mixture, you're going to keep it in between the gold. So you're basically just going to go fill in those spaces with glue. Now you're going to have to do your best to keep the lines as straight as possible, because now you no longer have that tape as a guide. But I promise it's not so bad. You do get used to it. I have seen someone on TikTok use a template where you remove square by square. I haven't tried it that way. I feel like I would get super confused like knowing which squares to remove, but also like sometimes I like to complicate my life, so it's probably really easy and I'm just like, I can't figure it out. But I like doing it this way because I can visually see what spaces are left to fill in what colors. So that's why I like doing it the old school way, just because I feel like it's easier for me. But it is a little bit of work, you know, but it's just kind of like when you do a tangram or a pentagram. They're a lot of work, but it's beautiful in the end. It's kind of the same thing with a plaid. It's a lot of work, but in the end, it's going to be really beautiful. So basically, what we're going to continue to do is in between each set of golds, we're going to do that mixture, okay? So I am going to let you guys watch this for a little bit longer so you can kind of get the hang of it. And then I'm going to show you what we're going to do when we come and apply our last color.
You would benefit from knowing the truth. I was frightened, but I held fast. I need you now at long last. I'll be your Emmylou and I'll be your Juliet. You'll be my grandma, Johnny too. No, I'm not asking much of you. Just sing, little darling, sing with me. I'll be your Emmylou and I'll be your Juliet. You'll be my grandma, Johnny too. No, I'm not asking much of you. Just sing, little darling, sing with me. just sing, little dog.
I am going to speed it up a little bit because it takes a pretty long time to do this, as you can imagine. And I know that you guys have had a little bit of parts where you can't see really well. That's just because I had to bring the cup up close to my eyeballs so I could make sure my lines were straight. But I think as the tumbler starts to take form, you can kind of see like where the colors are supposed to go. And like I said, if you want to come back and watch this and just keep pushing pause as you are going, I hope that I have created a tutorial that is easy to follow. I really want you guys to be able to tackle plaids because I cannot tell you the excitement in my heart and my soul when I was finally able to make a plaid. I was like, yes, yes. I was like, boom, chaka laka laka, boom, chaka laka laka, So I want you guys to have that same feeling. That's what I want for you. But anyway, so I just continued doing that, beautiful mixture that we did in between the golds. And then once I was completely done with that, the only color that we had left to do was the darkest color, which is the burgundy. So I am not going to make you guys continue to watch me paint these squares because I feel like I've explained it pretty well and kind of told you guys exactly how you have to do that. So now I'm going to fast forward and we're going to move on to painting the very last squares, which is the darkest color, and that's what's really going to bring the whole thing together. To do my very last color of glitter, I added a little bit of a purple tint to my glue just because I'm using the darker burgundy. And I really wanted to only do one coat of glitter for all of my squares. So that's why I put a little bit of color in my glue. You can use acrylic paint or dispersion colors by CCDIY. So once you start to do that final square, like the final squares with the very last color, that's when it really starts to come together. You guys, that's when you really start to see the plaid take form. And you guys will see as I continue to glitter these final squares in the darker color, it is just so satisfying. This is the point, this is the part in the tumbler where you're like, oh my gosh, I made it. I glittered this whole thing. Holy crap, here I am. I'm at the finish line. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial. Now, I do want to tell you guys, normally for every single one of my tutorials, I show you guys the part where I epoxy. This tutorial was already so long that I didn't want to add unnecessary clips. And because every single one of my tutorials shows me epoxying, if you guys are new to this, you guys can go back to any of my other videos because I always show the parts where I epoxy, and I usually tell you how many mLs of epoxy I'm using. In this case, I cut those parts out because I didn't want this to be like a super duper obnoxiously long video. But so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna finish painting all the squares, which at this point it's the last step. It's pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory. You only have one color left, and you basically just have to use your straight edge brush and completely fill that square with glue. You want to make sure you get every little corner and nook so you can have those sharp squares. You're going to do your darker color. I always like to do my darker color on the base as well, but I am not going to make you guys watch me glitter the rest of this whole cup because it's such a repetitive movement. It's pretty much the same, just over and over. I am going to go ahead and tell you guys the next steps that I did. I sealed my glitter. For those of you that watch my tutorials, you know that I always seal my glitter using polycrylic spray from Minwax. It's a little pricey. It's 11 something for a can. And I know that you can find a cheaper alternative. You can probably get Rust-Oleum clear spray, but it has never worked for me. I have tried it so many times and it has never fully sealed my glitter. So the product that I have used that in my opinion has worked the best for me is the Minwax, the polycrylic spray. That's what's worked the best for me. It keeps my glitters in place so that they don't cross-contaminate. And so I swear by that. You can get it at Lowe's or you can get it on Amazon. I get the clear gloss. I'll link it in the description of my video. So I sealed my glitter 3 times. letting each coat dry for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then when the tumbler was completely dry, I went in with 40 mLs of epoxy. This is a 32-ounce plump. It took about 40 mLs to get that first cover of epoxy over the glitter. And then I did another thin coat after that just to get a super smooth surface. Then I did a little bit of light sanding in the areas where I needed to sand. And then that's where we'll go ahead and move on to the next step. I'll show you guys how I put my decal together and all of that fun stuff. I hope you guys are enjoying this video. Here's a quick little glimpse of what it looks like when it's all done. It's super duper beautiful. We're going to move on now to putting together our flower decal. So I purchased the file for this on Etsy, and now I'm going to go into Photoshop. If you don't have Photoshop, maybe you could do this in Cricut Design Space or in a Word document. I'm not really sure. I use Photoshop for everything. So that's why I am doing it here. I purchased Photoshop years ago when I used to do editing for my photography. So that's why I have it, and I love it. But you don't have to have Photoshop to do this. I know a lot of people have done it in Design Space, or maybe you can do a Word document, or just anywhere where you can kind of stack images on top of each other. So basically what I'm doing is I'm kind of making my own design here, okay? I am taking, you know, all of the leaves and flowers from the purchase that I made on Etsy. It comes with all of these flowers and all of these leaf files. And I'm basically just kind of creating the design that I want. I knew I wanted it to be kind of wide, and I knew I wanted it to be long because I wanted it to cover a very big chunky piece of my tumbler. Anytime people ask me about measurements, I always tell them to measure their cup, because the measurements that I use for a 32-ounce plump might not be the same measurements that you're going to need for a 30-ounce skinny, a 20-ounce skinny, or you know, whatever tumbler style that you're using. So my best advice is for you to get measuring tape. I use measuring tape for any decal. I measure my cup to see how tall it is and how wide it is, and that's how I kind of determine the size of all of my decals. Now, 32-ounce plumps are a little bit over 10 inches tall. So what I did here was I made my little flower arrangement about just a little bit over 9 inches long and about 4 inches wide. So that is the size that I made it for the area that I wanted to cover. But like I said, if you have a different style tumbler, you might want to use a measuring tape and just make adjustments. All I'm doing here is I am creating a little collage of flowers and putting the flowers in the areas where I think that they look beautiful. It took me a long time to do this because I wanted to make sure I was mixing enough colors and making sure I wasn't putting, like, you know, mustard next to mustard, rose next to rose, white next to white. Like, I was trying to make sure that I was really breaking up all the colors and just creating like a really beautiful collage. Now, as far as the leaves going at the bottom, you could make them stick out a little bit more if you wanted to. I cut all of my decals by hand. Ever since I got my Cricut, it's never cut. I've tried to calibrate it. I've tried to do everything for it, and it just never cut. I never exchanged it or did anything, and now it's been over a year, so I've just gotten used to it. I absolutely hate Cricut. So Cricut will never sponsor me because I will never tell you to buy a Cricut, and I have no regrets. I absolutely hate Cricut. I hate Design Space. I think it is the worst software ever. There are so many issues with it always. So if you're a newbie, I would highly recommend getting a Silhouette. That is what I would go with 1,000%. I will always give you true advice. I will always tell you what products I genuinely like and I genuinely don't. Okay, enough of that. You guys get the point. But anyway, you guys are basically just going to do this until you have your floral pattern, you know, perfect the way that you want it. And then after this, we are going to print it on printable vinyl. And then you're going to see me do a little time lapse of me cutting it out by hand. In the spirit of keeping this video under 2 hours, I am going to go ahead and just move on to the next step. because I messed around with these flowers and rearranged them like a million times, and I'm not going to put you through the agony of watching that.
Kiss me hard before you go. Summertime sadness. I just wanted you to know, baby, you're the best. I got my red dress on tonight, dancing in the dark in the pale moonlight. Got my hair up real big, beauty queen style, high heels off, I'm feeling alive. Oh my God, I feel it in the air. Telephone wires above.
What we're going to do now is apply our decal that we've created on our tumbler. I tried to cut off a little piece of the backing and apply it that way, but I quickly realized that printable vinyl is not as flexible as regular adhesive vinyl, so I ended up just having to remove the entire backing at once in order to maneuver it better. But what I did was I slowly guided it with my sausage fingers around the tumbler, and I applied it slowly because I was working out the air bubbles so that there were no bubbles underneath the decal and the image wasn't compromised. I didn't want to have to stab it with my X-Acto knife to pop bubbles, so I just took my time and just kind of slowly guided it. I am absolutely obsessed with how this looks. I was gonna outline the flowers with acrylic markers, but I couldn't find a color that I thought would look good enough, and I just didn't want to take away from the flowers. I thought they looked perfect just the way that they were. So I ended up just keeping it like this, and I decided to do a decal on the other side that had a cute little fall quote. And I basically just shadowed it in Design Space, and then I layered, the black vinyl on top of the holographic vinyl. I am going to link the shop where I got the decal from, and I will also tell you where I got that pretty orange holographic vinyl so that you guys can recreate this if you would like to. If you don't know how to offset and you would like me to do a separate tutorial for that, please leave me a comment and I will absolutely work on another tutorial just to show you guys how to do the offset. I promise it's not hard or scary. And after sealing it with my final coat of epoxy, this is what it looked like. I hope you guys were able to keep up and watch the whole thing. Thank you so much for watching. I love you. Until next Saturday. Besitos.